Waldorf University is committed to providing high-quality, affordable education in a flexible online format so you can reach your higher education goals on a fire department schedule. They offer over 130 fully online degrees with programs at every level designed to meet the needs of fire professionals. Their fire science alumni includes all ranks of the fire and municipality leadership. Waldorf University is now offering 20% off of tuition for all Blue Card ICs. Go to waldorf.edu/blue-card for all the details.
Welcome to the B Shifter podcast. Today, got a couple of the Silverbacks in the house. We've got Terry Garrison, Nick Brunacini. How are you gentlemen doing this fine day?
Estoy muy bien. I'm fine. He's dandy. We're
fine and dandy. The comedy duo of fine and dandy.
That's it.
Last week, we were talking with Josh and Chris Stewart about who is training your firefighters. It was a really good conversation. And we thought we would continue that on, but in a little different realm with you guys about senior advisors and really the role of the senior advisor, maybe where that comes in with accountability. So I don't know who wants to kick that. Oh, well, first of all, I think for folks, especially that aren't maybe 100% immersed in Blue Card, or you don't usually have a senior advisor in your system, let's talk about what the role of the senior advisor is.
Right. We started messing around with command teams, I don't know, in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe. Before it evolved from like one incident commander getting there and then managing the entire response. Well, and that quickly became like the first in officer would establish command. And then that was followed up where you would have a response chief get to the scene within the next, a few minutes within the next 5 to 7 minutes would be on the scene. And then they would transfer command. And then that's the way we improved command. So in fact, the huge safety system that I operated with my entire career is we took command. So that eliminated a lot of trauma and accidents happening to us because it was a well thought out incident operation. It wasn't a just blind attack type of a thing. So you had to verbalize what you were doing in the beginning in a way that made sense to everybody. So that really got the whole thing going straight lines. Well, then once the IC number one, the mobile IC, got it up and running, is really from the time I was hired in 1980, it was like focused on the fire attack. That's the reason you're here. You're firefighters. This is what we do. So we were very aggressive of putting water on the fire. But back in those days, it was like you didn't put it on from the outside. If it was offensive, you had to be inside. So all that's changed and evolved as we learned more and got better. But then IC number 2 would show up and they would transfer command, especially of an incident operation where you still had a major hazard zone going. So like if we weren't able to put the fire out in the first few minutes of the thing, which is really kind of the way a fire attack goes, right? Offensive fires, you put them out within a few minutes. It's not, and when I started my career, I had this idea that and you would hear it from the older guys, like they would have these 30 to 40 minute firefights where like they're winning, the fire's winning, and it's back and forth. And it really never added up because it didn't go that way. It's like, well, if the fire's winning, it's kicking our ass, we're getting out of here, and the building's falling down. And that happens in the first 15, 20 minutes of the fire. So, it's got to be a pretty robust system to be able to account for everyone. So IC number 2 gets there, and their whole deal is put the fire out. Well, they get to the point where they think, no, you guys can't put this out. It's too big. You got to get out. It's going to kill you. So command kept the fire from killing us. But in the very beginning, it made us more effective so we could kill it. So that was the game you were playing. Well, so it was all command IC related. And then it became stay in the car. That was one of the main things. You talk to the old guys who raised us, like 2 generations away, so they got hired in the 50s. And then, so what's happening there is now IC number 2 gets there, and they're used to being outside running around figuring it out. Well, they said, no, you're not effective. That's what the first guy was doing, and it didn't work. So you doubling down on it just because you're a chief ain't going to make it any better. So then they figure, okay, stay in the car. So they developed that routine. Well, they pull up, and I don't know, I'm going to say probably 5% of the fires I went on started off offensive, and they ended up defensive, where you had to be pulled out because the fire was going to kill you. It was going to destroy the building, or the fire was going to burn you up, one of the two. So, and they would pull us out, and that's really kind of the way we delivered the mail and kept firefighters safe. Well, as that system evolves and becomes more refined, and we look at it more and input and make changes to kind of match what's going on, is see, and this is kind of happening with chief's aides today. We're in a place where, like, the people that know what chief's aides do, they're like, no, they're not aides. They're actual working members. Don't quit calling them an aide, because they're not an aide. They're two paramedics. There's not a paramedic aide. You're both doing the same thing. Yeah, so right. A response chief had 2 officers in it. That's the system we grew up in. Yeah. Well, that's what, maybe 5-10% of the fire service. 90%, you got one person in the car. So anyway, and ours is now you got the support officer, and that's the person really who maintains the tactical worksheet and knows where everybody is in the thing. And then the IC is really kind of more concentrated and focused on the firefighters that are killing the hazard right now.
Tactical priorities.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's like, okay, we got to get this fire controlled. And I got engine 3 here and engine 2's over here. And like, it looked like this. And now I got a lot more conversion. So it's going the right way. So we're going to keep doing this. So the support officer is the one tracking that. And then in the middle of this is your focus thing. No, this is good, blah, blah. And then the support officer is like, no, you need another company over here in the back because we haven't covered this area. You got the utilities still on. And, oh, okay, thanks, man. So that's kind of the way that works during the incident management phase. So then the next thing is we had a command van early on, and probably the early 80s, as they took an old Mack Gherkinslager rescue squad and converted it into probably America's first command van, at least at a municipal fire department. And essentially, they just cut windows in it and put some office space, desk and chairs and a bunch of radios, and became the command van. Well, so now they got and so they said, we're going to pull the IC. We're going to take this stay in the car to the next level and get them in the command post, right? And so it's going to be a bigger command post, because back in the day when they're inventing all this, they weren't in Suburbans. They were in like station wagons and
Crown Vics.
Yeah, Dodge Hornets and, big ass 4-doors that got real shitty mileage. So now we've evolved into command vans, and they've identified, okay, you got an IC and a support officer, because that was kind of the way we grew up, and it just made the most sense. Well, so that was a very powerful unit in the thing, as those two. And then you added the third person, who was the senior advisor. Well, and then you had NIMS going on, and then the NIMS system, you had the section positions. Right. So you had the 5 sections of operations, planning, logistics, finance, and whatever the 5th was. They said, we really don't do that on NIMS type 4 and 5 incidents. We don't have a finance section come out, because all that's embedded in the fire department cost centers. They run with a budget and research department in the fire department. That would be responsible for that section thing. I mean, we do that day to day. We don't do it for an incident. So typically, at least, we don't do that for 4s and 5s, right? So we thought, we don't use these section positions. And like logistics, we have somebody show up in level 2 staging with specialized equipment, and that's kind of what that does. So they're inventing incident command as they're going, between what they're doing in the LA basin and kind of what's happening in Maricopa County here with the departments in Maricopa County. It kind of led by Phoenix at the thing. The big department was kind of leading that effort. And so they said, there's something else going on here where you're managing the whole incident, because like the IC and support officer are doing the hazard zone piece. And then you got these functional sectors that provide support, like level 2 staging, firefighter rehab, logistics, if you got that, so you got this other network of organization you build on the back end to support what's going on with the incident operation. And, a bigger, like a multiple alarm incident. So we would go from we did 2 engines, a ladder, and like a battalion chief when we were hired. That was your response to a house fire. You would get 4 engines, 2 ladders, and 2 chiefs for a commercial assignment. Yeah. And then it started to evolve once they started building the incident command system. As they said, well, and then so then we added another unit for rapid intervention in the early 80s. So now if you said work and fire, you got a third. So it just kept growing. And they said, you got this going on in the back end. A lot of them are finished early. Like you get there and the incident lasts half an hour. Well, you only need an IC and a support officer working out of a Suburban to manage that. Now I got a greater alarm where I've got like 3 or 4 buildings on fire and I'm protecting 3 or 4 more with whatever's going on. Well, now I'm in a command post and I've got like a 5-hour firefight that I'm going to do. So I'm going to have to relieve companies that were there first and replace them with new, fresh companies. And then I've got to put like sector division bosses to manage the attack positions in the thing. And we didn't do that very often. We would use company officers to do that back in the day.
Because we thought it worked.
Well, and it works when you put the fire out. Yeah. So when you get there and from like, if the clock's ticking, you think, okay, we can use captains to manage the tactical organization here if the fire's not going to last longer than 5 minutes. Yeah. Because the hazard's gone and then they can do it because they're not tied to an SCBA and all the other stuff with the structure fire. But if you don't have fire control, they can't manage it. So we started seeing problems where like you're late into the thing. So you really need to go defensive because the conditions are bad, right? Well, you got let's say you got 3 captains who are acting as your division bosses. Well, they're inside on the attack line. They're not doing entry control or anything else. They're not a real division boss. All they are is a communication partner that we just called them that because it was easier. So the more you studied that and looked at it, you thought, no, they're not tactical bosses. They're task level supervisors and workers. So we got to change that. Well, so now you're on the working end of the shovel. And now back on the other end, it's like, okay, how does this command post work? Well, when we got hired, we had shift commanders. That's who managed. A shift commander was a deputy chief, was the elevation of their rank, and then all the on-duty battalion chiefs reported to him. So you had an A shift commander who was like an A shift prototype person. It matched. It had like 8% body fat, perfect haircut. His teeth were perfect.
Yeah, we weren't on it.
Yeah, we were. Well, you could have been, but we were.
Gold necklace.
Several.
Yeah, maybe with Italian horn.
If they were a medic.
Yeah. If he had been a paramedic, yes.
Definitely.
Girlfriend's name, Ashley?
Girlfriends.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe Bruce. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. The whole world's goo when you're that matter. Beautiful. Yeah, it really doesn't. And when you're that pretty, we're all just thankful to be in your presence. Mm-hmm. And then you had B shift, C shift, and all the chiefs reported to him. And they did the morning staffing, and then they ran the city. They were the ranking on-duty officer. And then the city's growing, a bunch of stuff happens, and we switched to districts. So it's more like boroughs. So every battalion became a district, and it was run by a staff deputy that worked a hybrid schedule. So you had all these essentially office workers that worked across the fire department, but not in operations, most of them, as they had promoted and gone off and run major programs and budget stuff. And so they're very talented at what they did, but like operationally focused, they weren't. I mean, they lost touch with operations 10 years ago. So what would happen is now I'm a battalion chief and Garrison's a battalion chief. I'm in the 3rd battalion. He's at the 1st battalion. He's got the command van. He's the informal support officer, basically, for the whole city. So, and really, they described and defined Battalion 1 as you guys are the ranking battalion chiefs in the city.
Same rank, just
Yeah. So basically, they were boning him out of a promotion and pay to be our boss because it
Exactly.
made his boss more comfortable because he wasn't challenged by somebody of an equal rank.
Right.
So it's slow going, but eventually that changed. Well, you had these deputy chiefs that would pull the duty, excuse me, and they would take turns spending the night, right? And so they would do incident response. So my boss would work a 40-hour week, and then he would pull the duty, and he'd work a Friday and a Monday is the way that's the example I use. He pulls the duty Friday, so at the end of his day, he just stays, he pulls his Murphy bed down, and he spends the night at work. Saturday, we both wake up and go home. We come back Monday, do the same thing. He pulls the duty Monday night. Tuesday, we get off. Tuesday, we're having our coffee. He says, I'll see you in 3 weeks. And that's it. He's gone for 3 weeks, man. You're like, who invented your schedule? He says, none of your business. Well, it was Earl Roberts in Madison, Wisconsin. And they called it the Madison schedule. And he did that as soon as he got there so he could put shift commanders and senior advisors into an organization that did that staffing differently.
Yeah.
So that's what we were doing. And at the time I thought, why are we having these guys spend the night as our babysitters and sit in the command van and watch us? Because that wasn't their expertise. My boss's expertise at that time was building fire stations. I mean, he knew more about that than anybody because that's what he had just done. Yeah. And now he's running a district. Well, so we're managing a fire in a warehouse one night, and he sits down and he says to me, do you have a PAR? And I said, no, not right this minute, but we'll get one here in about 10 minutes. And he says, well, I need one right now. And I looked at him and I thought, I said, no, I'm not going to do that right now because we're doing more important things. He says, so he starts, so Garrison kicks me under the table and says, just give him a PAR. And that's I got a PAR. Thank you, he says, and then he goes back to sleep. And I'm like, well,
that's all he knew.
Well, yeah, that was it. And see, in their meeting that he had with the ops chief, that's what the ops chief said. He said, we got to be safe and make sure you got a PAR all the time.
Are you done?
Yeah, go ahead, man. I was looking for somebody to take the reins on this for a few minutes.
On this podcast, I noticed, I actually watched one the other day, and we interrupted each other. I thought, okay, I'm going to try to be more patient.
It's not that bad. There's far worse interrupters.
Okay, so I was thinking, and as you were talking, you were going, so I was thinking, okay, I'm going to cover this, and then you covered it, and I said, no, okay, I'll cover this, and then you covered it. But what you said,
we went to camp together.
Back to that senior advisor position, is that in a type 4 and 5 incident, the senior advisor is the highest ranking command officer within the system that manages all those areas that if you went to a 3 or a 2 or a 1, type 1, 2, or 3, you would have an entire team doing that. But because it's not that, it's an expandable command, you only make it as big as necessary. So that one person, the senior advisor, manages, he's the highest level person within that system and manages those other activities outside the hazard zone. So the IC is managing the hazard zone, and he's focusing on tactical objectives, and the support officer is helping him and making sure that he has the right amount of logistics and that he has the right safety system in place, and he's helping him through that. It's like doing a little bit of short-term forecasting right there within the hazard zone. And then the senior advisor is looking at everything above that. And if you look at the last fire command book, it would say that the senior advisor manages, and I wrote it down here because I wanted to get it right, because it's been a while since I looked at it. So just let me read it. Is the senior advisor is managing the logistics piece, which is responsible for the rehab, staging, and kind of the critical incident debriefing piece. He's also managing the planning piece, which is the information management, the long-term forecasting of resources, and the demobilization plan. But here's the most important thing he does. is he's managing the admin piece. And I found myself when I was a senior advisor, I did a lot of that. And by managing the city officials and the elected people within the system and the other chief officers within the system that are similar rank, he's managing by keeping them away from the command post. And that became our biggest role. And the reason we did that, and we talked about it earlier today, Nick, and you described how that system evolved. But when we got to the point where we were in the command post, the command van, we call it, we were the IC. Early we were a support officer, but then we had an aide, so we became the IC. And the biggest problem we had is people would enter that command van, and they would be standing behind us in the command van. And you have an escalating incident. That's why you have the command van. You know, you had that plane that crashed the other day with that fireball that took out a city block. That would be a perfect example of where that may be considered, depending on the duration of that incident and how many resources it had. That could be a type 4 and 5 incident for Phoenix if it happened in Phoenix, because we'd manage it within our automatic aid system. But we would use a command van for that. But that's going to be going on for a while. So the IC's trying to manage that. The support officer, they're talking to each other. They're like glued together. And then you would have people standing behind them talking about the football game from last night, because that's what we did, right? You didn't see somebody for a long time. You're talking about your kids, your football. And the command van was just a place where it was kind of like good old buddies met.
It was like a rehab for chiefs. It was a big incident it's exactly what would happen.
And what we would say is that, And it became interesting because I think one of us, it might even have been him, I don't know, it doesn't matter which one of us, I don't want to go to the effing command van. Why? Because all those knuckleheads are talking in there. I'm going to stay on my Suburban. I'm not going. No, you got to go. No, I'm not going because when I get in there, I can't. So we found that the reason you go there is to be more supported. You know, you take that command position so that it's quieter, you can focus more, you have more resources, you got people that are kind of helping you there.
Well, it supports the radio communication system. Is you go into a 5-person command post to do 3 radio channels.
Exactly.
Saying what we ended up with is, let's say you got a big thing working and it's lunchtime and it's downtown. You're going to have 8 deputy chiefs inside the command van, and they outrank everybody else, all the battalion chiefs.
And everyone wants a par.
Yeah, and they do. And they all come in, and you turn around and you tell them to shut up. You're making too much noise, and they glare at you. And then you go back to them and you say, what are you all doing in here? We're the senior advisor. And you're like, there's only one. There's 9 of you in here. What they did is they went back and had a meeting, and they put in section books. And so they put planning,
just the way I read
logistics.
It off there.
And so that's what the senior advisor is responsible for, are all 5 section positions until you assign them. So now the deputy chiefs come in and they give them a book, a 3-ring binder, and they put it down and they forget what they were. And they talk about the football game and what kind of bullshit the assistant chiefs are making them do next week and yada, yada, yada.
No, I remember one chief coming in that outranked me in the positional world, but in the roles and responsibility on the fireground, I was a senior advisor, and he walked in and I said, what position you want? And I handed him one of those notebooks and he said, I'm not taking that. I said, then get out. Well, you can't tell. No, I'm telling you, you need to get out. I'm going to be very polite to you. And then I had a very large guy at the door there who didn't care about rank. But it's like, you got to exit because you're not going to help. If you're not going to take this position and support what we're doing in here, you need to get out because it's not a place for you guys to hang out.
I'm laughing right now because you guys started talking about this. We got a command van, because we were trying to be Phoenix, and we got this command van, and we have some major incident, some kind of community wide emergency, and we're in there, and it's like there was a very diminutive man with like pop bottle glasses, and he had all these radios and stuff, and Schabel or somebody at some point goes, and who's that? Oh, it's the president of the Ham Radio Club. Well, who the hell let him in? Like, he just saw the command van and saw all the antennas and figured, well, that's where I need to be. So, yeah, we figured out how to get rid of, because the Red Cross wants to be in there.
No,
then you got, somebody
They
from
really
City Hall,
don't. They just think that they don't want to be there.
They want to be out of in our area, they want to be out of the elements.
Yeah,
they want to be in the air conditioning. And that's what it was.
Yeah, for us, air conditioning. For you,
and they're too big. The thing was too, because we need it big enough to have like secretaries in it. And you're like, what? No, they're too giant. They make them too big. Well, it was like you go to Houston and they put a telescope where you can see the moons of Mars, but you can't look out the windows at the building on fire.
Yes, and that was one of the problems that a lot of cities had, is that police departments use their command vans in a completely different way.
You can't have windows because they'll read your lips.
Yes.
Yeah, and they want to hide information, and they got a whole different set of priorities. So some fire departments want to share command vans with police departments. No, the first thing you got to do is you got to take a hacksaw or a jigsaw and cut a big window in it for us, because we need to see what we're doing. I've seen command vans where they have giant computer screens. It's like, dude, just cut a window. Put a window in here and we'll see what's going on. Just park in the right location and you can kind of see what's going on. But really and you were saying it too, Nick, is the senior advisor's job is to align, just like you got strategic, tactical, and task, is to make sure everything's aligned within that system. The problem and the issue is some of those logistics and finance and admin, that needs to align within that system too. If somebody's doing something that's not supporting what's happening within that alignment right there, then the senior advisor said, no, you need to get back over here. For us, the senior advisor did a great job, because when you get a major incident, Nick and I had a call, and I'll say what he does first, and I'll tell you about the call. But what the senior advisor does is he makes sure that the rest of the system, whether you're a multi-jurisdictional system or a big city, is they have the resources they need to take care of the continuing calls, because the calls aren't going to stop anywhere else within the system. So you need to kind of manage that and work with the alarm room and make sure you're bringing in. We would bring resources from cities or jurisdictions a couple over, saying, hey, come in and cover this part of our city because we have an incident. So we had one that was wonderful. It was, I think, the vice president came in town, or the president, that windy day when we had the big 4-alarm building fire. And we had a fire that started on one of every day the wind blows in Phoenix, just like Houston and just like Oceanside. It's just a matter of which way it blows. In Phoenix, the way it blows is the sun pushes it. So in the morning, it blows that way. In the afternoon, it blows that way. And at noon, you can kind of see the shift. And we've seen people put a command post in the wrong location and say, what's this? Because the wind's going to change here in about 30 minutes, and they're going to be right in the. So we had a fire that was blowing through 3 or 4 city blocks. How many buildings, Nick? 5, 6 large warehouses were on fire, and large cardboard boxes were just flying through the air over the elevated freeway, landing blocks and blocks away. And we're watching this thing move. And Nick was the support officer. Were you the IC? You were the IC, and Lynn was your support. So Nick got there. He's the IC number 2, and he was in a Suburban, and he was the IC, and his driver was his support officer. So the command van gets there. He moves into the command van. Am I saying this right, Nick?
Mm-hmm.
And he moves in the command. He's still the IC. The support officer is still his partner that started with him. I get there. The command van gets set up. I'm the senior advisor, and my job is to do all those things we just talked about. Keep everybody out, make sure it's nice and quiet, make sure he could focus on the fire. All that was happening exactly the way it was supposed to happen. There wasn't a lot of surprises going on. We had the fire chief show up. Alan Brunacini showed up at one point, and he walked in. He goes, how's it going? He has his hands in his pockets. He's allowed to be in there. But the good news about
He was the
this,
chief.
but the good news about this, he's allowed to be in there, but he wasn't disruptive. He was a fire chief of that large fire department, but he was never disruptive when he entered a command van. He would ask, "How's it going? Looking good." And he would spend about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. He liked to watch what was going on, and then he would exit. But nobody else was in there unless they needed to be in there. Once again, the command system is expandable. And I see in my mind the highest level of expansion within a Type 4 and 5 incident is using the senior advisor approach in the command van, having the IC and the support officer on one channel, focusing on the incident, having a second channel where safety's talking, and now it's an embedded safety where they may be talking about accountability and PARs off the tactical channel, and then you have a logistics where they're talking about level 2 staging. And it worked out really well because it's almost like we use a lot of stickers, and so the senior advisor is kind of standing in the middle of all that is happening, and he looks down and he sees that they're getting low on the fireground as far as resources. So he talks to the support officer and he goes, "Hey, you guys need some?" "Yeah, we need 3 or more companies over here." So the senior advisor is the one who walks over to the logistics guy and says, "Hey, contact staging, send 2 more companies over this way." All that happens on a separate channel, right? It worked out really well.
Well, the way the system's designed is, let's go back to that. The first wave gets there, right? It's led by a mobile IC. They're on one tactical channel, and they're eliminate the hazard that's screwing everything up. Then that's the initial operation. The reinforced operation happens when IC number 2 gets there and transfers command. So now you've got a full alarm. So let's see, IC2 gets there 10 minutes into it, and you got 4 companies assigned. Now, let's say you got 3 more companies in level 1 staging, and IC number 1 upgraded the assignment. So now you dispatched a greater alarm on the staging channel. So now you're at the point in the operation where you got to be operating on 2 channels in the command post.
Right.
You got to run the tactical channel to manage your IAP, and then you got the logistics channel to get your fresh resources assigned over into the tactical world. Right?
Right.
Well, now you got an IC who's running the tactical, and you got a support officer who can manage the logistics channel. And he doesn't listen to it, he just manages it. So what he's doing is he's staying on the TAC with IC number 2, and then he periodically goes to staging. Who do you have? And he keeps a roster of the stage companies. And so that when somebody, like one of the sector division boss needs resources, Alpha to command, I need 2 more companies. Well, it's a BC you're sending them to now. Right? So copy 2 companies. The support officer, command to staging, 2 companies to Alpha. Who's it going to be? I'm going to send you Engine 5 and Engine 9. Copy. Engine 5, 9. Post-it note. Command to Alpha, you're getting Engine 5, Engine 9. Communicate to them directly. 5 and 9 are in staging. They're monitoring the tactical channel. Yeah. That's what they're interested in. They heard themselves get assigned, so they're waiting. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Alpha. Engine 5, I just did leave your rig and staging. Bring your crew up on deck. Bring Brottles with you. Copy. Boom, boom, boom. So now you're decentralizing this. You got tactical bosses in place, and they're running the sector divisions, right? 2 channels in the reinforced command post. If it goes bigger, you go into a 5-person command van, so you can do 3 channels. And Terry said it, the embedded safety officers that I have that are running the Alpha and Charlie divisions now at this thing, is the IC can go to them and say, command to the divisions, Alpha and Charlie, we're putting the safety section up. Have your safety officers go to channel 16 for safety. So now you got in each division, you got a division boss with a safety officer who are married at the hip. One can give accountability updates over the safety channel. They can communicate also. We kick this around of leaving it on the logistics channel, because then everybody, you're either in or you're out, and you're on one of those. But we screw with it and figure out what works best. But we got to a point where we said, well, if it's a third channel, it's easier because they can say what they want and they're not getting into logistics business or rehab business.
That's interesting.
So and they become a safety thing. So they just kind of go back and forth. But anyway, now the senior advisor is responsible for putting that in place. Once you get to a 5-person command van, the senior advisor becomes the boss of the command post.
Yeah.
And that was in our system. So when the fire chief comes in, the fire chief's the boss of the fire department, including that command post. But the senior advisor is responsible for managing what goes on inside of it. Now, if the fire chief comes over, fire chief or the ops chief, they outrank the senior advisor. So that's just part of the hierarchy of ranks.
Ultimately, though, who's in charge? If you've got a senior advisor and say you have a fire chief in the command post, who's really in charge?
Of that incident, the senior advisor is in charge. One of the first primary, and Nick says it, and it's hard to kind of cover all this without charts and graphs and communication.
If you're watching, we will put up a graphic of how the command van's laid out.
It's not complicated.
But I think senior advisors' number one responsibility is to get inside the command van, identify themselves as the senior advisor, identify whether we need to have a separate channel if you have the resources and you get people there. So we would have we would have chief officers show up to the command van, and they would stand in front of the window, and you would look at them and you could tell them to come in and say, okay, you're going to be on the safety channel. You're going to manage this, or you're going to be on the logistics channel and you're going to manage this. So once you had those two set up, okay, now I got my command van set up. Now I can keep everybody out except for the fire chief who wants to show up. And now I got to start thinking about, okay, now I need to talk to the alarm room a little bit and let them know that this is going to be, because they're pretty smart people in the dispatch centers, alarm rooms, whatever you want to call them. But you can say, hey, this thing's going to get bigger. It's going to go several hours. Make sure we have resources coming. And you start talking to the rest of the fire department, managing that kind of stuff.
You're using a cell phone as a senior advisor. Yeah, you're not on a radio. You're talking to people face to face or on a cell phone.
And the biggest thing, like I'll say it one more time, is keeping people out of that. Just like you talked about rolling up the window. It's kind of a formal, I'm rolling up the window on a command van. Nobody's coming in unless you got an assignment to the command van, unless you're the fire chief. And once again, the fire chief. And if it got where it was pretty hectic in there, even the fire chief knew when to come in and not come in. Yeah. Sometimes he'd just stand out there and not
I think you asked the question, the fire chief's there, who's the senior advisor? Well, the fire chief can be the senior advisor if they want to be, but they have to officially transfer and take it.
So that's
what I would do. So like if I want to be the IC, I show up and I have to formally transfer command. Yeah. You would do the same thing with the senior advisor position.
So where we kind of left off this evolution of things, we were at Battalion 1 was the ranking battalion chief, and they would be the senior advisor. But ideally, who is the senior advisor? Or what? So how did that end up
in the
working
system?
out?
So maybe in Oceanside or a place like that I worked with had 4 or 5 fire stations and a limited number of chief officers. You could certainly have a fire chief get to the scene, and it's better if people are already in response positions. You don't want responding from home. It's kind of difficult, but we know that a lot of the fire service responds from home. So you got to practice this. If the fire chief says, you know what, myself and my assistant chief are going to play the senior advisor role, and we're going to make ourselves available for fire responses or large incident responses. I'll take every other day. He'll take every other day. Then you practice that role and you orchestrate that. And this fire chief could get on a scene and say, I'm the senior advisor. How's things going? Because they have the ability to do this. You got enough channels, you got enough people. Let me start managing the top layer of what an incident command system, incident management system would look like if it was a type 1, 2, or 3, but we're at a type 4 or 5. So let me manage the system and take care of all this. But it takes practice. They got to think about that. It's not something that you can show up just because you are the fire chief. It's something that if you're going to do that as a fire chief, I would recommend that you train with the crews and do that a few times so that the first time you do that isn't right then, right there. Right. But you could have an operations chief do that. You could have a fire chief do that. You got to play your position. The position has to be identified. The people that are going to play that position. It doesn't, the rank, you could do it in a smaller system. If you train people on being the senior advisor, it would be nice if they had positional rank, because then they would have more authority in the system. And then when they start dealing with outside elected officials and stuff, they'd be more identifiable. But the best people, fire chief could do that. You asked, back to your question, I think a fire chief could absolutely do that. I think the problem with the fire chief doing it is twofold. One is they don't respond. They respond kind of voluntarily.
Yes,
and
not regularly.
Who wants to be a fire chief who's on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, their entire life?
No, they couldn't do it. Like in a busy system like this, the fire chief could not do it. It'd be impossible. But
it's weird because every department that I have seen or people that I have taught, I'm talking everyone. You talk to them about how simple this can be. It's not easy to do, but how simple it is to align operations and training and make sure that the training division or the training officer is teaching the right stuff that you want throughout the organization. And every one of those departments you'll hear, well, we got this guy who won't do it. And that guy is a brick thrower somewhere high in the system. And, Bruno used to say one brick thrower can outperform 1,000 bricklayers. Mm-hmm. There's one brick thrower somewhere located in that system that needs to be dealt with by the fire chief. Sometimes it is the fire chief, and that's very difficult, and I feel bad for people within those systems.
Well, they just have to wait till that person leaves.
But what we do is organizationally, or personally what we do, because I did it one time in my life, or several times in my life, we all know who that guy is, but nobody tells or complains about that guy. Nobody officially says, hey, we could do this if it wasn't for Joe, because they don't want to hurt Joe's feeling, because Joe's a good old boy in other places. He's good to drink with.
He's a good dude.
He's good to drink with or good to fish with. Mm. But, I watched this special ops TV show series the other day, and those Green Beret guys and those Navy SEALs, they were getting these guys ready to go on a combat mission, all these celebrities. And they said, you know who you want with you? Not somebody who's pretty, not somebody you want to have a beer with, not somebody you want to dance with. You want somebody in there that's going to have your back. And that's what you want. Well, that's what you want when you're trying to align your organization. There's always one person out of alignment that is allowed. Not always, I shouldn't say always, but there's more times than not, there's somebody within that system. It's like a vertebrae out of whack, man. And that thing is not going to walk straight if you got that out of whack vertebrae. So you got to get everybody aligned. On the incident scene, the senior advisor aligns everything and makes sure that everything is focusing on the fireground. Those guys can do their job. They got the resources they needed. The rest of the system are able to perform and continue to go on their calls. They're ready for the back end of it because the IC is not thinking about, eventually we're going to have a demobilization plan. Eventually we're going to have to maybe have a critical debriefing plan. Eventually they're not thinking about that too much. That's a senior advisor's role, is to say, okay, what are we going to need in 30 minutes from now other than on this within the hazard zone, and align all that about to make sure that he could support the incident commander.
And I found it incredibly valuable when you had a senior advisor as the IC that was taking care of all that stuff. The press would show up, or the city manager would show up or call. It's like, I've got an active incident here. I can't deal with that. Well, like you were saying with the cell phone, if it's the right person, they're on the, I'll take care of it. They're on the cell phone calling the city manager. So you can concentrate on the tactical channel and the operations.
I think if you're starting to train senior advisors, start with a phone list. And so when we get an incident, here's the critical phone numbers that you're going to need to do. You're going to have to call the mayor. You're going to have to call the fire board. Let them know we got a major fire, because you don't want them all up your arse later on. Well, tell them we got a fire and they're not allowed to come to it.
Yes.
Watch it on
Undisclosed
TV,
location,
because they're not going to get to go in a command van and all that. The perfect world for a fire chief to have a perfect department, and you see this a lot, would be to have all the company officers on the same page, right? We work really hard to get the company officers at the task level on the same page to operate efficiently in the hazard zone, the same way. We're not as good, now we got better at it, is getting the tactical level operating the same way on the hazard zone. So now you got this aligned, now you got this aligned. If you have the next level come up, the senior advisor, whoever those senior advisors are, they should operate the same way. You expect it down here, why wouldn't you expect it up here? And when you get those three levels and you line them up with under the curriculum, like Nick says, focusing on the work in the same way and with the roles and responsibilities, then you got one organization. And how many times you go, man, we got 3 fire departments. We got an A, a B, and a C. No, we got 30 fire departments, because we got an A Station 1, a B Station 1, a C Station 1. And the same thing would happen with us. So once we all kind of got together, and the 3 shift commanders that were managing the 40 stations or whatever we had, I don't know what it was.
50, 60, it kept growing.
Whatever it was. When we were on the same page, and then you align that with training, it was really beautiful.
In the positive sense of the meaning of this, as far as accountability goes, like holding people accountable to do what you trained to do, what you said you were going to do, whether it's part of the customer service aspect of it or just the service delivery, then who was that? Was that the senior advisor, the person in that role? Were they the ones holding people accountable?
Terry talked about it. It's training. You have to train people. And it can't be, okay, this is the way I think you should do it. This is the way we do it as our fire department. We had a fire one night in a 4-story apartment building. Had a breezeway connected to another 4-story apartment building, right? So we think we got the fire knocked down in the building. And we got lines in the breezeway, whole thing. And I think, oh, we're done, man. And so I'm in the command van doing my thing as a senior advisor. And all of a sudden, somebody says, we got smoke in the other building. And I look over and I thought, there are whips of something over there. And a couple minutes later, it's like it's jumped. We got a working attic fire, and I'm going to burn down. We saved one. We're going to burn the second down. So I tell Bev, who's logistics, I said, send a BC to that building. And you tell them to come back with a can report to the IC of what they need. And she says, okay. And so she's doing her thing. And I go to the support officer and I say, don't you worry about that. You tell them we're taking care of it. There's going to be a BC coming up in about 3 or 4 minutes, give you a can report for what he needs to deal with that fire. So I get all that done. And Beth is like, she's verklempt. And she, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Said, for what? She says, I told staging I needed a BC, and they sent the BC, and she says, the BC is Battalion X, and Battalion X was incompetent, like well-known incompetent. I'm like, okay. Well, this will be fun. Bev, you did what I asked you. Don't worry about it. Chief X had been to the last 3 or 4 command training things. He gets over to that building with his aide, and he comes back and he says, I need 2 engines here, and I need a ladder here. Just give them to me. And so they give him 2 engines and a ladder, and we listen to him put the fire out, basically. 10 minutes later, he comes back to the IC and says, we have fire control. I have no further needs. Pete Holbel, the A shift guy, I don't know where he was, but he called me on my cell phone. And it's like 3 a.m, right? I'm like, what? Why are you? He says, you win. Yeah, because they had run it before we took it over. And he says, the current training program produced Chief X doing that, the A shift's in.
You can convert anyone.
Yeah, and that was what it was. And so I went and found Chief X and did an after-action review with him and said, that was outstanding, man. You sounded like Rommel moving through Africa. And he says, Nick, he says, thank you for that. Yeah, I know. And he says, the training we've done, he says, that it was really needed. A lot of guys were very deficient in these skill sets. And I'm chewing my tongue off. I'm like,
And those other guys.
Yeah. And it was like, but, we know. And I'm like, well,
there you go.
You, me, and Pete Holbel. So that is kind of the effect you're looking for with the thing. It's just success, and it should come It's harder, but like when you're actually executing the job, it makes it easier as you get to the end quicker with less trauma and pain. And I mean, that's when you have a hazard zone, there's trauma and pain there that's waiting for you. It's like, no, don't get none of that on you. That's not good. So that's kind of the senior advisor piece. Yeah. But I think that, Vance, that kind of marries back into what you guys were talking about because that is every bit as important as who's training your troops.
Right.
I mean, it's all part of that.
It needs to be aligned.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And it's a hugely important role.
Yeah.
It really is. Whether it's permanently assigned, I mean, you guys had it permanently assigned, but if you're in any kind of jurisdiction where you don't have it, figure out how you're going to staff that, because eventually you're going to have an incident of the scale where you're going to need it, but you also need to have those conversations well in advance of that incident to figure out exactly how that's going to go.
Got it.
Well, Terry said a resource list. If like our dispatch center they could contact. If you needed demolition equipment, I needed demo equipment. They would, so what for? So that's a cell phone call. This is what I need. And they call, we have a demolition expert who's on call. Hydra was the company. And you call for them, and 3 hours later, they're showing up with backhoes and front end loaders that are as big as buildings.
Okay.
And I mean, and they have a 6-figure contract with the city of Phoenix.
I don't know why the hell I just thought you guys had access to dynamite. I was like, geez, Phoenix did have everything. Yeah, we get blasting caps. No, you meant backhoes.
Yeah.
That kind of demolition.
Well, they used to carry a jet axes on the ladders.
Wow.
The final thing about senior advisor is the incident commander is managing, the IC is managing the hazard zone. The things that he or she's involved with will hurt you right now, right there. The senior advisor, if they don't have a pretty good list and an idea of the job that they need to do, some of the things that you're going to get are going to hurt you on the long run, like dealing with a politician, not calling the right people, not having a PIO identified, not taking care of the rest of the city and running out of resources for the entire system, not getting the water that you need to get. We used to have to get water shut down on that part, or I don't know how they did the whole valves and all that. I don't know too much about watching the environmental effect of the smoke coming off, all that kind of stuff, the senior advisor. So if you get them and you train them, and they can help you for the long run and keep that entire fire department and system out of trouble. That's really their job. But their primary job, the number one, is keep people away from the incident commander and protect that guy so he can do his job.
That's what we did most of, is we kept the command van, who it was populated with, and whatever the IC. You have to look at the incident and figure, okay, we're good here. What are we lacking, if anything? Yeah. So, I mean, it really, for like a senior advisor level call in the system, we were fortunate because we worked for a big metro place that had a lot of resources. And so you were able to kind of to do a set of work to identify that better, to come up with better solutions.
You know, in some systems, the senior advisor may be the guy standing outside the window keeping people from the IC.
Yeah.
And
Terry, when we didn't have the command van there, that's where I would go. I'd stand next to the driver's side of the command
keep
post.
people away from that guy when all those politicians and all the cameras and everything have a place for him to go. But that's probably he's a protector within that system. You don't need a big command van to do that. But having a senior advisor say, I'm the senior advisor, I'm going to sit in your back seat and tell you what to do as the incident commander is not a senior advisor.
No, it doesn't work.
That's a guy who wants to be IC. Senior advisor, stand outside my window and take care of all this crap that's coming at me and keep us protected so we can manage the incident.
It's real support.
Yeah.
Really excited that this book is back out. So we've got Timeless Tactical Truths from Alan Brunacini. These are available at bshifter.com in our store for only 10. Where can you buy a book full of this kind of wisdom for $10?
Is that a pocket size?
That's a pocket size. Can you put that in your pocket?
I don't think so.
Don't break your pocket.
I think it's a back pocket
It's
size.
almost a cargo shorts pocket. You can put them in there. But full of great Timeless Tactical Truths from Alan Brunacini. So you can buy that right now. So let's do one of those. Timeless Tactical Truth from Alan Brunacini says firefighting is always potentially painful because it gives the test just ahead of the lesson. A lesson is repeated until it is learned. Well, I think your senior advisor is going to be the one who's learned a lot of these lessons and can pass that on to the rest of the team.
The senior advisor would be the most experienced member of the command team, essentially.
I saw my dog the other day, my little Chihuahua dog. And we have Arcadia doors in the Phoenix area. And I opened the glass one about a week ago, and I saw him run right into the screen one. Mm-hmm. He hasn't done that again. So I'm his senior advisor. So now I open one and I look at him and he looks at me and I open the other and he goes, got it. And he goes out. Protect people.
Yeah.
I don't know why I envision that, but it's more of a role where you actually protect the incident commander. And I feel bad that I didn't help my dog the first time, but he learned a valuable lesson.
Exactly. One of the things I learned as a senior advisor is never ever help somebody do task level labor.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. So like if you're going from your vehicle to the command post and an engineer's having trouble doing his hookups, just smile and wish him well and keep going to where you're supposed to.
You got a role and responsibility.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, if you got tools in your hand, you ain't the senior advisor.
That's distracting.
Go see him after the fire and tell him why you didn't help him.
Yeah.
Exactly. During the after action review. And it's like, hey, man, you were humping to get your thing. I was humping to help him on the strategic level. Yeah.
Sorry, Mongo.
No, so it's all good.
Well, thanks, guys.
Well, thank you, JV.
Nick Brunacini and Terry Garrison. Thanks for being here with us.
John Vance.
You're welcome. I'm self-identify, or you identify me.
You know, Vance, there's not a lot of times we come to you and say we want to do a podcast.
Yeah, you guys did.
Yeah.
You knew what our topic was, and I think this was apropos for the last one. So thanks for bringing it to us today.
No, we'll keep it. Garrison is moving ahead with Silverbacks, so we're like at least 2 modules haven't been released so far.
Stand by.
That's about alignment.
Yeah, there you go. It's all good in the neighborhood.
Thanks everyone for listening to the B Shifter podcast.